Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Trialogues podcast. This is Gaylord DeWald coming to you live from Burlington, Vermont, except I guess it's not live because it's a podcast. I have with me my favorite cohorts in the industry, Lindsay Planetta, our producer, Rob Hahn, and Matthew Shadbolt. Why don't all you guys say hello?
Hi, everyone. This is Matthew. I'm not coming to you live because obviously, as Gaylord explained, this is a podcast, and you all listen at various times during the day. But I'm in New York City, and I'm the Director of Interactive Product and Marketing at Corcoran, and it is very, very nice to be back doing the Trialogues podcast after our little hiatus here. So great to be back and chatting with you guys.
And what's up, everybody? This is Rob Hahn of 7DS Associates, and man, I am super, super glad to be doing this again. Matthew, you're back on the show. You're back overall. Yeah, it's not live, but it's Memorex. But only the Gen Xers, I think I can get that reference.
You're dating yourself, that one, Rob.
I know. But how are you, Matthew? I mean, we missed you.
I'm good. I missed you guys too. For those that are sort of wondering what the hiatus was, I had a little bout with some bad health, which caused me to be in the hospital for a little while, and then a very, very protracted recovery period. But everybody that knows me on Facebook and everybody that knows me sort of elsewhere online, everybody's been kind of amazing with all the support and the well wishes and the checking in, and it's actually very, very it's very humbling. Is the real truth of it, and because of sort of what I had to go through, it's sort of a life-changing thing anyway, and I don't mean that lightly. I mean sort of literally life-changing. But I have a very, very different perspective on, just sort of lifestyle things and work and, greater emphasis on things like family and friends, and sort of my priorities have sort of significantly changed for the better, I think, for the better.
Good, man. It's really, really good to have you back. Because I know that a lot of our listeners are, just worried and wondering, and you sound, you sound great.
Well, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. I feel great. I'm sort of slowly transitioning back to a full schedule, but I lost 50 pounds. That's the big news.
God damn.
So if nothing else, I'm coming to you a lot thinner today. That's for sure.
But that's probably like a pretty harsh diet method. I don't think anyone, you're not recommending that, right? Just need to lose a lot of weight.
No. I mean, some of that 50 pounds was all at once, as in the middle of some surgery. So, I don't recommend it. But yes, definitely. Those of you that know me sort of, elsewhere online will know that I love a good burger. And I love, I love that genre of food, and we love to post sort of horrific things to increase your cholesterol levels elsewhere within what we do on Corcoran, and a lot of that has been significantly curbed for me personally. So that's actually a very good thing.
All right. Well, I know we only have about half an hour today. They're sensitive to how much time we can keep you here, so let's dive right into it, man.
Let's do it.
So in the pre-show, Matthew, you actually want to talk about something super interesting that's going on right now with Zillow. You want to just introduce the topic?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we were talking about Zillow's, not only Zillow's new ad, and for those of you that are unfamiliar with that stuff, Zillow released a new ad online this week, which is basically follows the journey of a couple using the web and using Zillow's suite of tools from the apps to the website to sort of focus in on a home purchase. And you see a lot of that happening sort of remotely, where the wife is talking to the husband via Skype and or FaceTime, I guess it is in the ad. And the big sort of reveal when they actually get to purchase the house is that the father is a soldier who's returned from service, presumably overseas. And that's sort of the big reveal, is that it's more focused on sort of the emotional emotional constituent parts of the home purchasing process, and how Zillow is sort of injecting themselves in sort of integral part of how all that stuff works to bring these people together. And I understand that that's actually going to be rolled out as on a more sort of national level as part of a very large media spend with TV. So we're going to see a lot more Zillow commercials. And one of the things we were sort of talking about in the pre-show was, not the sort of creative aspects of this is that, it's obviously quite a tried and tested advertising technique to sort of tug at the heartstrings like that. Like you see the mom tucking in the girl at night, and to sort of use that kind of imagery of the soldier returning to home. And obviously home is like a large part of any kind of real estate brand's sort of premise. But it was sort of an interesting approach for Zillow in particular, is that they're becoming a lot less technology oriented in their brand premise, and it's becoming a lot more about sort of the meaning of home and what that means to families, and more the kind of warmth of how that technology works with that stuff. And it's something that we've spoken about on the show before, really in reference to some of the work that like NAR has been trying to do with the sort of value of a home. And it just struck me as sort of an interesting play, I think. I don't personally find the creative to be that strong, but I can understand that it sort of tugs on the heartstrings of in a way that's very, very popular. I mean, what you guys have seen it. What did you think?
I guess I'll jump in on that one. There's a couple things on that I think are really important, especially around the idea of Zillow's, approaching things at a more branding-related level of, attaching to the actual purchase and the emotions and all that, like you were saying, as opposed to technology. And I think what's interesting for me in relationship to, say, what NAR does for promoting home ownership and that, is that a lot of the stuff I see out of NAR is about, seems to be about a lot of, fear or anxiety driven in certain ways. That's just the message that kind of the signal that I'm picking up oftentimes, whereas the message coming out of the Zillow ad is one that's more positive or hopeful. It's not about, or it's more about the positive, I guess, aspects of look at how this kind of thing helped. And it's not about
right.
Your kids are going to fail in school if you continue living in an apartment or something stuff like that.
Closer to what Coldwell Banker have been working on. Their sort of value of a home, and here's to backyards, right, and that kind of stuff, right? It struck me sort of almost sort of it's sort of running parallel to what Coldwell Banker are doing.
What's interesting about that ad? I thought it was super effective. And I don't know. I differ slightly in the sense that I think advertising and marketing folks, they're always going to use whatever the most powerful heartstrings, there are to tug, right? It isn't as if we haven't seen examples, throughout not just real estate, but, selling cars or whatever that's trying to really be this, super touching, stuff. The one that I remember in particular was, I think it was Michelob or Miller. They did this ad, it's like soldiers walking through an airport. You guys remember this? And people are clapping, right?
Yeah.
It's one of these things that really just, touches you and, brings a tear to your eye unless you're with the Muslim Brotherhood or Al-Qaeda or something.
But
I thought that
it's easy to be cynical about that stuff because but it's that cynicism doesn't exist at the level of viewership. The actual viewer isn't going to sit there and sort of analyze it in the way that we might here, for example.
No, and I can look at, I was just looking at the YouTube video that Zillow uploaded. Obviously they've been airing this, over TV, which is something else we should talk about. But, if you look at the comments, if you look at, sort of the consumer reaction, people's reaction, it's 211 thumbs up, 7 thumbs down. So I think it's pretty obvious that they hit a home run with this one, right? But to your point, what's so interesting about this is, I've been writing like these premium reports on Zillow for 2 quarters now, and I'm, gearing up to the Q3 report, Q2 report when they release the results. But it's been really obvious, right, for, at least beginning of this year, maybe even last year, they start hinting at it, where Spencer and the Zillow team really talked about something called brand white space in real estate.
Right.
And they've been, they undertook this path, and they're spending enormous sums of money on this, I think. And, they had budgeted something like, $20 million for, TV, for this type of advertising. But I think they doubled it. At the last quarterly report, with talking to analysts, I think Spencer mentioned we're going to double our spend. And they were very specific about, why they're doing that. Their take on it is, after they run these ads, not just this one, but the first one that they, had aired, they're seeing massive spike in traffic. But it's not just a spike. Like, what they're saying is it remains. Like, it sort of resets at a higher plateau. Right?
Yeah, and that's very typical with television advertising in particular, is that you'll get that sort of initial lift, but that there's residual traffic that actually never goes away.
Correct. So they're really going to double down on this, and my sense is if they see that even this ad maybe gives them even more lift, I don't see any reason why Zillow wouldn't then say, okay, let's triple our spend. I mean, literally, if every dollar that they're spending is going to result in, these significant long-term traffic and branding gains, there's no reason why they shouldn't do that. Now, again, so there's 2 things to talk about there. One is this a smart strategy for Zillow, to really go into the brand, area? Because, I think it was Brian Barrow, I can't remember, one of the 1,000-watt guys talked about how disturbed they are that Zillow is going into the branding business, instead of sort of just the technology business. But the second question that I would bring out is, why is there a brand white space to begin with? Right? I mean, to your point, NAR has been advertising for what, decades? Right? A lot of real estate companies, brokerages have done advertising. Century 21 did a Super Bowl ad. So with all of that, the question I suppose could be, why is there a brand white space to begin with that Zillow could attack like this?
I mean, the thing with the brand, I'll jump in on this, and then Gaylord, maybe you can go after. But the thing with brand white space is that, on the one hand, there's room for everybody, right? There's room for everybody in the way that there's room for Coke and Pepsi to exist together in the same market, right? And it's not that somebody is being squeezed out because somebody is, being aggressive about how they brand. And I think, Zillow has always been a brand, right? They've had a sort of perhaps disproportionate focus on technology, but one of the things that I'm sort of noticing is that because Zillow's technology is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily plateauing, but it's at that point of sort of critical mass where they have so many robust products that they've invested in significantly and are at that sort of stage where, what they do in search is very, very strong. And what they do in mobile is very, very strong. And what they do in social is very, very strong. And like all the sort of constituent parts of it are at that level where, the sort of product value of them is very, very deep and very strong. And the acquisitions have obviously been a large part of that as well. But they're at that sort of point where they actually have a very, very strong suite of products. And that brand awareness is actually more a technique to actually just let people know what Zillow offers, really, above and beyond search. Now, this particular promo, with the soldier and everything, a lot of that stuff is focused on search in the way that, like, a Google ad from 10 years ago might have been focused on search. But just in the way that Google is a lot more than search now, right? It's mobile operating systems and video, and Google has sort of moved into that sort of brand white space, if you like, where they're actually doing, here's the journey of a family over 10 years.
Yeah.
Their Dear Sophie Chrome promos and things like that. Zillow is sort of moving on a sort of very similar path, and it's sort of, I wouldn't say that there's necessarily like a template for this stuff, but you see a lot of sort of previously technology-focused companies starting to play in the emotional brand awareness space. And Google is like a great precedent for that. But Amazon have done it, Yahoo have done it, eBay have done it, and the more that kind of stuff happens, Facebook is a good example. Like you watch like a Facebook brand promo. It's very little to do with technology and all about, sharing life experiences and connecting the world and, that kind of stuff. And, Zillow is like sort of the real estate industry's version of that. And in a way that perhaps it approaches the problem sort of differently than a brokerage can or perhaps should. Because Zillow's comprehensive suite of things, it's very different from what a brokerage does, I think, and deliberately so. And they obviously are very keen to stress this whenever you hear, Spencer talk or something like that. So I think it's very interesting that, I don't fear them moving into the brand white space. I think it's actually a very, very positive thing. And I think brokerages can learn a lot from what Zillow are doing. I've said that at the technology level, but I also think it's possible for a lot of brokerages to learn from the brand level as well. So I think overall it's a very, very healthy, positive thing.
Yeah, I don't want to jump in on that a little bit, too, because I think at the core level, kind of what we're looking at and seeing there is sort of a shift from, like a classic marketing level of like, are we advertising features? Are we marketing features or are we marketing benefit, right? The feature benefit kind of thing. And we see a switch from or a shift from talking about the features, like the estimate and all that, towards what's the benefit. The benefit is you can do all this stuff and approaching it in an emotional way. So there's that classic, just two different marketing styles, right? As you move towards branding, you end up talking probably more about benefit. Also, in terms of the sort of history of technology firms shifting, following this shift from feature to benefit as they go into branding, there's the granddaddy of them all, and this, of course, is, as usual, Apple Computer, right? Back in the 90s, they were trying to talk about the megahertz war, and they kept on talking about, well, we've got this different kind of processor. That they're talking about features. And then when Steve Jobs came back, they shifted, and it became about magic, and it became about how easy things are and how everything works. Yeah, here's the crazy ones. So that model has existed in Silicon Valley for 20, 30 years, right? So it's natural, I think, that would happen. So that's kind of one thing that it makes me think of is the shift from feature to benefit. So like if we were to think about how might a realtor, an agent or a broker learn from what's going on at Zillow, that's one of the things I would encourage people to look at is if you're going to move towards actual branding, what's the benefit side? And it's hard for some people to see that. That's not always an easy conversation. People say, the benefit is I'm X% cheaper, or I have the following things on my bullet list in my listing presentation. Those are all not really benefits. It's really digging deep into the emotions. The other thing that's intriguing about it for me is in terms of their timing and how they've worked it out. We talked on this podcast a while back about the customer decision journey and the customer process around homeowning, and how Zillow now kind of has a piece of technology in all of those different areas, from renting all the way through to after you buy stuff and you're making improvements to your house. So that being the case, they've already got all the technology for that whole home ownership thing. So they're not going to make significant new traffic by adding they can't acquire another chunk of technology that adds a new body of traffic, because they've already got a piece everywhere. So the only way they can really grow their numbers, which is what the investors are probably going to want to see, is by increasing the number of people at each of these stages, which, again, we're looking at a branding, the branding solution there. You can't buy a new segment of customers when you already have all of the segments of customers available. So that's kind of an interesting piece in terms of sort of timing in their approach to stuff. Those are some of the things I guess I'm thinking about when I'm looking at that. Now, I agree with you, Shebel, that I don't think there's any big cause for concern that they're going into this branding approach, and I think it's good, and I think you're right. People can look at it and learn from it, how they're doing it, what kind of success they have with it. you know.
And there is.
I mean, some of it, you know. No,
I mean, there is sort of like a sort of a first mover advantage to this as well, in the way that they're obviously aggressively pursuing this in a way that perhaps somebody like Trulia is currently not. You know, and getting out ahead of that stuff, and like you say, trying to almost sort of lock up audience a lot for each one of those segments in a way that would perhaps preclude those same users using other services or other platforms. We know already that there's actually very little crossover between Zillow and Trulia's audience. They're actually two quite distinct groups of people, whereas, you know, very often there's the sort of the assumption that Zillow, Trulia, and Realtor.com is actually all the same audience. That's not true at all. There's very little crossover. I think when I saw Zillow present specifically on this, I think they said there's only like 15% overlap between Zillow and Trulia's audience. It's actually very, very small. You're either a Zillow person or a Trulia person. And if, like you say, I think it's really interesting what you're saying about sort of growing the individual segments, like growing home improvement on digs, or growing their, you know, financial services stuff, or growing their rental business, you know, or growing like tools that customers and agents use together, like all those individual segments. That's a brand problem. You know, it's a growing audience for each one of those things, and it's, you know, if it's the case that you're either a Zillow person or a Trulia person, to be able to lock that up earlier rather than later is to your advantage from a business perspective. Absolutely.
Well, so there are a couple of things, though. I mean, I don't want to be so blasé about, you know, dismissing this from this standpoint. And the second part of kind of what I'm really wondering about is why there's a brand white space to begin with, right? And here's kind of what I'm wondering. Before Zillow did their first commercial, which was really effective, I thought Coldwell Banker, when they did that commercial with Tom Selleck, I can't remember the name of the commercial. It's like Home
Value of a Home.
Something.
Yeah.
Value of a Home or something. Dude, that commercial was awesome.
Like an algorithm. It was done like an algorithm. So it was like you take the number of kisses and multiply it by the number of hugs and, you know, that kind of stuff. And it becomes...
Yeah, but, you know, I'm saying in terms of heartstrings and emotion, talk about the benefits, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I thought that was an extremely effective commercial. You know, I thought it was the best real estate commercial I had seen until that point. And Coldwell Banker obviously spent a bunch of money, you know, doing it on TV and pushing it online. So I feel like they were first to market, right? But even though they were first to market, Zillow's coming in with their stuff, and they're showing massive results. So, and again, I don't know whether, you know, what sort of advertising budget Coldwell Banker has. You know, I don't know what sort of, I just don't know what kind of spend that they're doing, right? But it does concern me if a brokerage, right, and one of the top brands in real estate, Coldwell Banker, went out and did an awesome commercial, started, you know, really advertising it. I haven't seen that ad in a while, right? So what I'm wondering is, did they stop advertising because they're not seeing the results that, you know, Zillow thinks that they're seeing? Do you know what I mean? And
well, a lot of that stuff tends to run seasonally, Rob. I mean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the way that a lot of that media is usually bought is that you buy it for, you know, a certain number of months.
Right.
With like, you'd buy it with like a certain channel distribution associated with it. So there'd be sort of like flight dates associated with that, and they would buy it from, you know, sort of January to May or something like that. And it's prioritized. It doesn't sort of run indefinitely because, you know, it's sort of like when you see the Geico ads and you just see them again and again and again. That's actually quite rare that you would see the same ad for, you know, a long, long period of time.
No, I understood. I mean, popular, but the thing is this, right? Zillow is doing this all the time, right?
Yeah, Rob, I also think we need to be careful about, like, saying whether anybody's having massive success or not if we don't know what their objectives and what the actual numbers are in terms of, I mean, I think you're right. We can assume that if they continue to do it, that it probably means that it's working for them. But you know, like, just because we like a commercial or we feel it's effective at a creative or emotional level doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to achieve whatever specific business results
Oh, no, I agree. And here's the thing. Normally I would agree with you, and, one of the hardest things about advertising is, what's the saying, right? I know that half of my advertising is totally worthless. I just don't know which half, right? The reason why I think this is a little bit different is in the first quarter earnings call, Spencer Raskoff, talking to Wall Street analysts, pretty much said, this advertising campaign that we rolled out, we've been testing in various markets and so on, is having significant positive impact for them. Right, so one of the things he talked about is we're going to double down. They're actually going to double their spend on advertising in Q2. Right, so I'm sitting here going, okay. Granted, we don't know exactly what the numbers are. Right, we don't, but we do know their traffic numbers have been kicking everybody else's ass. Right, last thing I heard was that Zillow apparently hit something like 55 million monthly uniques I think it was in May. Right, they're claiming they hit like 55 million. I'm sitting here going, dude, that's massive traffic growth. So the question I've got there is, so clearly Zillow is committed to spending more. It's not simply that they're saying this advertising campaign worked and, oh, good for us. They're actually backing up those words with real dollars. Right? They're saying we're going to double our spend on advertising. The question I had was, Coldwell Banker did a spend with a great ad, and again, they didn't then come out and say, you know what, this was so effective, we're going to double our spend, right? Just like Zillow did. So question that I have, it's not a criticism anyway, it's a question I have is, why didn't they? Did they not see the same sort of benefit and results that Zillow got from their TV?
I want to jump in on this one, and then hand it over to Matthew. So there's two things that come to mind on that, and I don't know that either one of these is really it, but there's two things that I think about. One is that they have different business models. Right? The success of Coldwell Banker involves a different kind of behavior than the success of Zillow. Now, granted, lots of traffic is good for both, but lots of traffic is much closer to the end game of making money for Zillow than it is for Coldwell Banker, right? Because Coldwell Banker has to actually, for them to make money, houses have to be sold, right? Mm-hmm. For Zillow to make money, they can make money on eyeballs. So it's the different business model is going to have I think a strong impact on that question that you're answering, and I had some second thing, but I totally spaced on what it was, so I'm going to hand it over to Shabo.
Well, maybe I'll jump in while you space. I mean, the simple answer is that Coldwell Banker don't really have to disclose this, and
of course,
they're under no obligation to disclose anything in the way that perhaps Zillow is being sort of a little bit more transparent on. But yeah, I mean, Gaylor's absolutely right. The business models are different, and Coldwell Banker can't really monetize things like page impressions and traffic in that sense in the way that Zillow can, because the Coldwell Banker's business model isn't dependent upon display advertising. It's dependent sort of on processes much further down the line than what Zillow is talking about in their ad. In fact, in order to get to the things that Zillow are actually portraying in those ads, you have to work with an agent. And that's the sort of bit that's missing out of the promo that I understand. So I've had a lot of feedback from some of the chatter online is that, so where's the agent? And the truth is that this promo is one of many in this particular series that Zillow are running, and some are more agent-centric, and some are more emotional, and some are more mobile-focused, and some are, there's like a mix of things as you would sort of expect from a campaign. It's just in the way that, when Apple, to use Gaylor's example, when Apple does their Mac versus PC, there's like 20 of them. There's 20 different versions of this thing with different stories portraying, different features and benefits of the product. So, they can't sort of encapsulate the entire process in one ad, and sort of nor should you. So,
Yeah, but hold on. Let me cut you off.
That's the answer. Is different business models.
Yeah, but but what you're saying though, and I know we got to wrap up because man, we just need to continue this conversation on the next one because I know today your first day back. But here's what I'm reading from what you're saying. Okay, what you're essentially saying, both of you guys are saying, and I'm not disagreeing necessarily. I just find it really interesting, something to really think about is because Zillow is able to monetize eyeballs directly. Right, whereas a brokerage, cannot. Like they have to go through the entire, the cycle and do a transaction.
They
the
could
brand white space, right? The existence
could.
of a brand white space, right? It's almost like what you're suggesting is that is voluntary and intentional on the part of brokerages, because for them to go dominate and become the dominant brand, so when people think real estate or houses, they think Coldwell Banker, that is not cost effective for Coldwell Banker or any brokerage to do, whereas it is cost effective for Zillow to be the first in mind when a consumer thinks, I want to buy a house. Oh, Zillow, right? If that's true, then that's a fundamental issue, right? And it's probably one that cannot be overcome.
I think
you're drawing a false equivalency there, Robert.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe. And this is why, seriously, 30-minute trialogue sometimes. I know it's good to have Matthew back. Why don't we pick this up again at the next call? Because I know you guys are really tight for time. Is that cool? We'll just agree that I said something that might be a false equivalency, and we need to revisit this at the next show.
Yeah.
So. Okay. So I know we need to wrap. So let me start by just saying how happy I am, how glad I am that we're arguing, because it means Matthew's back and he's healthy and everything's good. And I can't wait till we pick this up again and you guys tell me exactly the various ways in which I'm wrong. Gaylord, what's your wrap up?
Yeah, I look forward to telling you that you're wrong.
It's the highlight of your week. It's the highlight of your week to tell me how wrong I am.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And it's the highlight of my week to listen to you tell each other how wrong you are. I'm happy to just sit on the sidelines and watch that stuff.
All right. Well, great to have you back. Thanks for listening, and expect to see us back on schedule. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
It's the magic number. Somewhere in this hip-hop soul community.